Today is Monday, June 8th, 2015. We're at a family reunion in Oceanside, California. Most of the other folks are off doing their own thing, and Mom is going to tell us a little bit about her life from about the time Roger died for a few years thereafter. So, go ahead, Mom.
So after Roger died, I had two little twin daughters, Robin and Roberta, they weren't even walking, although they were about 14 months old. But they were tiny because they'd been born prematurely. And I, of course, realized
I forgot what month of the year. When did he die? What month?
He died in June.
Totally unexpected.
Yes, just suddenly had a cerebral hemorrhage. I don't know if it's the same thing they call an aneurysm these days, but we had a young man in our ward died of one very unexpectedly, just collapsed and died a couple of days later. They still don't do much for that sort of thing. They don't operate or anything. There's not much they can do. So of course I realized I'm going to have to support these girls. The only place I'd ever worked was except for babysitting and odd jobs, I just worked at Bonds where I got 50 cents an hour.
Let me ask you one thing. Now, you lost another child, though.
Yeah, about 6 weeks before that, I'd had a baby die.
And it was full term, and even lived for a little.
No, he was small. He only weighed 4 pounds.
But he did live for a little while.
The problem some of my babies seemed to have was something called hyaline membrane, which meant their lungs were sticky. Anybody that's kind of old may remember President Kennedy's baby. He had a baby that lived about 3 days. Same thing, hyaline membrane disease. They, of course, took him to the best hospitals and best doctors in the world. Before that, I thought, well,
maybe I didn't get good treatment.
In Farmington, they'd have probably saved that baby. He wasn't tiny, like some babies. They saved 1 or 2 pounds. It wasn't like that. When he was first born, they thought he was looking healthy, and then through the day deteriorated because of his lungs. But anyway, to go back to, I needed to earn a living. That summer I went back to work at Bonds, and Mother tended the kids, and they paid me a lot more than they had when I was in high school. I got 50 cents an hour, and then I was getting $1 an hour. They paid me that sort of, but I thought, no, I probably can't support kids on this. And then, of course, after your kids are grown, you don't keep getting Social Security. They pay it to you while your kids are grown, so you can help with them. So I made arrangements to go to BYU, and that fall, school didn't start then till towards the end of September. My sister Cleona had been up there for, I think she'd been there 3 years at that time, and was about to graduate, she and her husband Duane. And my brother Vaughn had gotten home from his mission, and he was wanting to go up there to school. At that same time, my father became very ill. He'd had cancer the summer before that and been operated on, and like colon cancer, but he was feeling very poorly, and the doctor said there was nothing they could do, and he didn't really want to admit that he was dying. He thought a month or 2 of rest and he could recover. We had a family reunion that summer, and I think it was the very first that all of my brothers and sisters had gotten together for a long time. We had it there in Kirtland, and it was very nice. I think almost all the family showed up, but
And there's a nice big picture of that reunion.
Yeah, we do. We have a picture of all the attendees, a lot of my family, a lot of my nieces and nephews that are about my age. So, even though they're nieces and nephews. but it was a difficult summer for him. But my father became very ill, and he had even though he was almost 80, he was 79, he had a teaching contract at a school in a little town in Colorado called Rico, Colorado, where he lived in pretty primitive conditions. But anyway, he was determined to go back up there and finish out the year and teach, and he had a contract. So he asked my brother Vaughn to go up there. Vaughn didn't have any education classes, and he had only 1 year of college at Fort Lewis. So, but he went up there. They were eager to get anybody that was a warm body in that classroom. And so Daddy said, just teach for me a month, because that school started toward the end of August, and college didn't start till the end of September. And he says, I'll feel better by then, and I'll go on up. So Vaughn has some funny stories to tell about.
I've heard them. They're good, yeah.
If you were with parents of those kids, maybe you wouldn't think they were too funny, but he had a lot of big boys in his class. He'd take them out in the hall and knock their heads against the wall, basically. So he didn't get put in jail, though.
In those days, no.
The school board was glad to have anybody there to keep a little order in the classroom. So, of course, at the end of the month, he came back to Farmington, to Kirtland, because he was going to go to college, couldn't keep on, so they had to hire someone else at Rico. I never heard who they hired or if they even found anybody to do it. It was pretty desperate. That's why they hired my father, who was pretty elderly.
Yeah, no, and barely alive, yeah.
And so we made a trip.
So about this time did your dad pass away? About that time?
My father didn't die till February.
Oh, he lived all through that? Okay.
So he could have gone up there, I guess, for a couple of months.
He could have.
Had to teach from his bed.
Bad, he was too sick.
So we made a trip to Provo and found a house. We rented a house that belonged to a couple named Dunn. Their last name was Dunn, and they were going to go on a mission. They were happy to rent us the house. And this was their second marriage. And the man, he had a favorite joke he'd tell once in a while. He'd say, yeah, she used to be married to a ball, but that ball done quit rolling. Because his name was Dunn.
Okay.
So they left, and about the next week we moved into the house. It was 3 bedrooms, so I stayed in a bedroom with the twins, and Cleona and Duane had a bedroom, and Vaughn had a bedroom, and we lived there, and we were all kind of basically kind of poor. Cleona and Duane was getting a GI Bill, some money from the GI Bill, because he'd been in the Navy during the Korean War. So, and Vaughn had also been in the Army, but he didn't go overseas. But he had some money from the GI Bill also. That's basically how he was going to school. And I had Social Security, which was really, I'd never thought about Social Security before. But it was like a godsend.
Oh yeah. And so was it for the? It was for the girls, not really for you, right?
It was really for the girls, but they also had a certain amount they added on for me.
Okay.
Because if I'd stay home and take care of them, if I went off and got a job, then they would deduct that amount from it. And it was about, I think it was around $200 a month, which sounds pretty low, but things, of course, were a lot cheaper then. The bad thing was Roger had made a pretty good salary, and we had bought a really nice Buick car. It was a very nice car. I guess these days they would insist that people had life insurance. They didn't even mention it then. I had to keep making those $80 a month payments,
so those were huge.
Those were a killer.
Well, this was 1957. All this was occurring. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
1957. We probably paid the girl. I can remember that we got together on our groceries. We cooked together, and we figured $20 a person was what we'd spend a month for groceries. So
a month.
Things were much cheaper. But for me, since my girls were little and didn't eat much, the three of us paid $40. Cleona and Duane put in 40, Vaughn put in 20, and I can't really remember who did the grocery shopping, but we took turns cooking, and that's what we...
And they must have helped some with kid tending.
They did, but I found a babysitter also.
Okay.
It's related to a friend. She was related to Geraldine Walker. I think she was married to a Knutson. Geraldine's maiden name was Knutson. So that's where I took them, and I paid her probably $20 a month. Not a whole lot, and we started school and got along
pretty well.
Pretty well.
So then that was 2 semesters, fall and
we went to just a regular ward that was there in that part of town, which wasn't a really wealthy part of town. It was an old church that had a lot of stairs in front, and we there was a class that we were in. I'd take Robin and Roberta's class, and it seemed like Duane would get upset with how noisy they were a lot of times. He'd snatch them up, one under each arm, and go out of class. And I guess he wished I would do that, and I didn't do it. I remember one time they got up, the floor wasn't carpeted, the garbage can was a metal garbage can, and they each grabbed a hold of the side of that garbage can. They were having a lot of fun jiggling it around, banging it on
bang,
the
bang,
floor.
bang, bang.
It was pretty noisy. Bang, 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 bang. And he snatched them up on one under each arm, took them out. I just sat there listening to the garbage can, I guess.
But LaVon, did he go pretty regularly then to church?
Yes, we all went to church, and yeah, we were all there. And this off-campus ward, I don't know what you call it.
But he hadn't met Sherry yet.
No.
Okay.
The next year, I don't remember really saying, man, this was a burden, having to put up with all these other people. But we just kind of talked and agreed, well, let's find our own place this next year.
And what'd you do that summer? Did you go back and work at Bond's?
The next summer I stayed at home with Mother.
Okay.
There was just, she and Maybeen and Hugh were there.
And you lived there too with the 2 girls.
But I had the middle bedroom, Hugh had the north bedroom, Mother had the south bedroom. She and I think Maybeen stayed in there with her.
Okay.
So
by this time your dad had died, because this is the next summer.
My father had died in February.
Yeah.
When we came home at Christmas time, he was very weak, and I suppose we didn't spend as much time with him as we should have. I look back on it now and feel really regretful that I didn't spend more time with him.
But you were kind of burdened too with these 2 little kids.
I had the girls, and I don't know about what everybody else was doing, but as we packed up the car, we're starting to get ready, my mother came running out of the house, and she said, Daddy wants to say goodbye to you.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't get to really say goodbye to you yet. And I don't know if he realized or what we thought this was really goodbye. I don't know, but so he went back in and feeling very guilty. Wow, we're so intent on getting this car packed up and getting out of here. We didn't even say goodbye to our dad, and so we went back in,
and that was good.
Have a good goodbye, but it
felt kind of bad that she had to call you back in.
Call us back in, because we were just going to get in the car and drive off. That's sad.
Well, you're only 19. You have 2 little kids. It's easy.
My brain wasn't really formed yet either. Now
Yeah.
I think about it now.
Yeah.
My child rearing. I wasn't probably very good at child rearing. I was just a kid myself, and then so then we came back when he died, which was February 13th. My my sister Lavona came and helped Mother take care of him. He stayed at home then the whole time. He never went in the hospital. I don't know if this would ever happen now. There's no hospice. There's nothing except that our neighbor, Sarah Huntsman, who was not an RN, but she'd worked in the hospital some. She was allowed to come by and give him shots when his pain got too bad. And she just did that as a friend and neighbor. And then, so it was getting close to my sister's birthday, the 14th of February, Valentine's Day, and Lavona was, I don't know why, but it meant a lot to her that he not die on her birthday.
And he didn't.
Just oh no, he's going to die on my birthday, because he was kind of sinking into a coma. But he definitely died before her birthday. Like early on late at night on the 13th, like maybe 10 or 10:30, he died. And then we took a few days off school and came back for the funeral.
Okay, so
And he was buried in Arizona. We didn't go down to that. And so then Rob and Alberta eventually learned to walk when they were about 15 months old, and they developed fine. They didn't care that much about going to the babysitter. They went to Margie, I think her name was Margie Knudsen, and she had a little girl that was maybe 6 months older than them, and she would make them cry sometimes, so they didn't care for that babysitter. But the year got through, and we all went home for the summer. And I didn't work that summer. I just stayed there with Mother and schools. But before I went home for the summer, I tried to arrange for housing in the fall. And I went Cleona and Duane and got student housing. There were what they call some Quonset huts there they'd got from the government, and they rented it really cheap, like maybe $30 a month or something. And Duane and Vaughn stayed in student housing also. I think they called it Helaman Halls, where he was. And that's the year he met Sherry. She was in some student housing also. They probably met at the ward or something. And so I went over to the school housing office and asked if I could get one of those Quonset huts there, along with Cleona and Duane. I told them I had those two girls and I needed some cheap housing. I was having trouble getting by on my Social Security. And they said to me what they would get fined for now. Well, we don't rent to widows or divorced women. We're interested in getting the men through school, and we find the widows and divorced women cause a lot of trouble with our married men, the married students here. So I don't know. So I was really angry. I was very angry, as you can imagine. I would have gone to another school, but I don't know. I had the hours there, and it was difficult to transfer BYU hours because you have to take a lot of religion hours, which count towards your graduation at BYU, but
not anywhere else.
Not anyplace else unless it's a BYU college. So Cleona and Duane were there, and Vaughn, they were always so helpful, tending the kids when they had a little time. And in fact, they tended them the next year. I don't think I had another babysitter. They tended them, and we just arranged our hours so we could always have somebody there to tend them. Then I found a house that a man, I think he was in the Army, he was in the Armed Forces anyway, and had a family, and he hoped to come back and live in that house, but he had bought it and was renting it out, and he rented it fairly cheap. It was $105 a month. So it had a basement apartment, and And if I would sign a lease, that I had to sign a lease for 3 years, including the summers, to get that for 105. That was a pretty good rate for it. And so I figured my share would probably be 55. It's a little bigger upstairs. Upstairs was 2-bedroom. Downstairs was 1 bedroom, and it also had a little laundry room downstairs. So it was a little smaller downstairs. So I rented the house, and I was able to rent it to a family. Their last name was Brown, and so then he wasn't the most reliable person in the world.
Darn.
But anyway, it was fairly close to the college too. I would budget $5 a month for gas because gas wasn't as expensive in those days. But the Buick used a lot of gas. Toward the end of the month, maybe any time I could, I walked to school, which was about it was less than a mile. But I could only do that if someone was coming to my house to babysit. I couldn't walk with the 2 little girls. But I think most of the time Duane or Cleona would come over to my house to babysit, but they were hoping those kids that'd be during their nap time so they could get some studying in. Duane also worked, and I can't remember where he worked, but he did work besides going to school. So, and Cleona was pregnant that year. She had Margot the next June.
1950.
1958.
Yeah.
Because Margot's 2 years younger than Robin Rupert, who were born in '56. So that was a pretty good year, I guess. I can't remember anything outstanding about it, really. I went to a neighborhood ward also. My neighbor, it seemed like that my house was actually one of the cheaper houses